After getting a good night's sleep, Dr. Seward begins to doubt Van Helsing again. He thinks, maybe Van Helsing is losing his mind. He cannot understand the strange events. He wonders if Van Helsing himself somehow caused everything. Seward writes, Van Helsing is extremely intelligent. If he became insane, he could still carefully carry out his strange ideas. There must be a logical explanation. Even so, Seward decides, I will watch him carefully and try to discover the truth. That evening, Arthur and Quincy Morris come to Van Helsing's room. Van Helsing tells them, there is an important duty we must perform tonight. Arthur admits that Van Helsing's letter confused him. Quincy says, me too. Neither of them understands what Van Helsing wants. Van Helsing notices that Seward has also returned to doubting him. Van Helsing asks them to trust him before knowing everything. He says, promise me that even if you become angry later, you will not blame yourselves. Quincy immediately supports him. He says, I don't understand him, but I know he's honest. Van Helsing is deeply touched by Quincy's faith in him. Arthur answers carefully. He says, if this goes against my honor as a gentleman or my faith as a Christian, I cannot agree. Van Helsing accepts those conditions. Arthur finally agrees to listen. Then he asks, what exactly are we going to do? Van Helsing replies, we are going to the churchyard at Kingstead. Arthur is shocked. Where Lucy is buried, Van Helsing nods. Van Helsing says, we must enter the tomb. Arthur becomes angry. Then Van Helsing says something even worse, we must open Lucy's coffin. Arthur can barely believe it. He cries, this is too much. He believes disturbing Lucy's grave is disrespectful and dishonorable. He cannot understand why Van Helsing would suggest such a thing. Van Helsing speaks with sadness. He tells Arthur, tonight our feet must walk through thorns, or later the feet you love will walk through flames. He means that temporary pain now may prevent much greater suffering later. Arthur warns him, take care, sir. But Van Helsing asks everyone to hear him out before judging him. Quincy agrees, that's fair enough. Van Helsing says, Lucy is dead. Is that not true? Everyone agrees. Then he says, but if she is not dead? Arthur jumps to his feet. He asks in horror, was she buried alive? Van Helsing answers, I do not say she is alive. I only say she may be undead. Arthur is stunned. Undead? What does that mean? Van Helsing explains that there are mysteries in the world that people do not fully understand. Then Van Helsing asks, may I cut off Lucy's head? Arthur explodes with anger. He shouts, no. Never, he says, Lucy's body must be protected. Her grave must not be dishonored. Van Helsing is torturing him with these ideas. Arthur asks, are you mad, or am I mad for listening to this? Van Helsing stands and replies firmly, I also have a duty. He says he has responsibilities, to others, to Arthur, to Lucy, and to the dead. Then he promises, if, after seeing everything, you still disagree, I will answer to you for my actions. He begs Arthur not to leave in anger. Van Helsing explains how much Lucy meant to him. He says, he came from another country to help. He loved Lucy as a dear friend. He gave her his blood. He sacrificed his days and nights trying to save her. Then he says something powerful, if my own death could help her even now, I would give it freely. Arthur realizes that Van Helsing truly cared about Lucy. He sees that the professor is not cruel. He is simply trying to do what he believes is right. Arthur takes Van Helsing's hand. With a broken voice, he says, it is hard to understand, but I will go with you and wait. Although he still does not believe Van Helsing completely, he trusts the professor enough to continue. The group is now united. They are ready to face whatever truth waits inside Lucy's tomb. It is almost midnight when Van Helsing, Dr. Seward, Arthur, and Quincy Morris climb over the churchyard wall. The night is dark, clouds move quickly across the sky, and moonlight appears only sometimes. Everyone stays close together. Van Helsing leads the way. Dr. Seward worries about Arthur because Lucy's tomb may remind him of his grief, but Arthur remains calm and brave. Van Helsing unlocks the tomb. Everyone enters. He points toward Lucy's coffin. He asks Seward, "Yesterday, was Lucy's body inside this coffin?" Seward answers, "Yes." Van Helsing opens the coffin. Everyone looks inside, then they jump back in horror. The coffin is empty again. Lucy has disappeared once more. Nobody speaks. The silence is finally broken by Quincy. Quincy says, "Professor, I trust you. But I must ask, did you do this?" Van Helsing swears that he did not touch Lucy's body. He explains everything. 2 nights earlier, he and Seward found the coffin empty. The next day, Lucy's body had returned. They rescued a missing child from the graveyard. He used garlic to stop Lucy from leaving the tomb. Tonight, he removed the garlic. Now Lucy is gone again. Van Helsing says, "Wait with me, and you will see even stranger things." They leave the tomb and stand outside. The fresh night air feels wonderful after the horrible vault. Each man reacts differently. Arthur, silent, confused, trying to understand. Seward, less doubtful than before, beginning to believe. Quincy, calm, brave, accepting whatever comes. Van Helsing, focused on preparing. Van Helsing takes out thin white wafers, a strange putty-like substance. He crushes the wafers and mixes them into the paste. Then he seals the cracks around the tomb door. Quincy asks, "Is this some kind of game?" Van Helsing replies, "It is not." Arthur asks, "What are those wafers?" Van Helsing removes his hat respectfully and says, "The host. I brought it from Amsterdam." The sacred wafers are meant to stop the undead from entering the tomb. The others are shocked by how serious Van Helsing is. After a long silence, Van Helsing whispers, "SSSS." He points down the avenue of yew trees. They see a white figure approaching. The figure is carrying something dark against its chest. Moonlight shines through the clouds. Now they can see clearly. It is Lucy Westenra, but she is no longer the Lucy they knew. She is carrying a small fair-haired child. The men are horrified. This Lucy is different. Before, she was sweet, gentle, pure. Now she is cruel, sensual, heartless. Dr. Seward says, the love he once felt turned into hatred and disgust. Van Helsing shines his lantern on Lucy's face. They see fresh blood on her lips. Blood has run down her chin and stained her white burial clothes. Everyone shudders. Arthur nearly collapses. When Lucy sees them, she snarls like an angry cat. Then, without caring at all, she throws the child onto the ground. The child cries,